Hello.
Hello. Hi, Lesley.
Hi, Willie. How are you?
Hi, I'm okay. Can you hear me all right?
I can. Yes. Loud and clear. You sound good. Can you hear me well?
Yes. Yes. The first thing is, can you introduce yourself to the listeners and let everybody know what it is that your business and mission is?
Absolutely. So thank you so much for having me as a guest. I am Lesley Jones Sessler. I am a principal turned unschooler. So I'm basically a homeschooler with the unschooling self-directed educational philosophy. I unschool our son, Sammy, who is 6 years old. My husband and I homeschool him. And I am a former educator. I'm a progressive educator. I've taught for 14 years. Then I was a literacy coach, followed by being an assistant principal, a principal of an all-girls school, then an assistant superintendent. I've also had the delight of being an adjunct professor and also an education coordinator for foster care youth who have aged out of the foster care system. And again, now I'm a homeschooler to Sammy. I've taught as a traditional teacher, but mostly as a progressive educator. Once I went from traditional schooling and then discovered progressive education, I fell in love with it and never looked back. Now I've been on my homeschooling journey for almost 2 years. I'm also a play-based advocate. I believe wholeheartedly in play-based learning. There's so much that comes out of it with children, cognitive skills, social skills, emotional skills, physical skills, just to name a few. There's so many gains that children need, and it's developmentally appropriate for them. And I am also a blogger at WatchMonkeyMama.com, where I blog about homeschool, education, motherhood, and lifestyle. Would you like me to tell you about my mission and business, or should I stop for now?
That's what I was just about to ask about that, because, like I said, I follow you on Clubhouse, and that's part of the reason I asked you to come on, because with my homeschool journey, it was different because I went to school to learn more like the educational part, and then just learning all the way up of how to homeschool and to kind of, it's some of the things that the kids had to break the habits of some of the things they had learned in school and then reteaching it. And it's my journey was different, I guess, because of the work background and your work history. And that's why I love what you do so much and wanted you to come on to help some of the homeschool parents that I know that look for ways to educate, that may not know the exact lesson plan part of it, or how to figure out the best way. Because what I always talk about is a lot of times people don't realize that every individual child is different. So one set system may not work. My girls were both very different, where one uses podcasts and it was a internet-based program called Time for Learning and different things like that, where the other one she loves books and physically getting the book that is suggested and doing that type of thing. And that's why I wanted to, every time I hear what your work history, I'm amazed by, and I was actually just about to ask if you could give a little more of that information.
Sure. Absolutely. I'd be more than happy to do that. So thank you again. First of all, I want to say, and I say this with conviction, with passion, I say it with wanting every parent to truly understand that the parent is truly the first teacher of their child, of their children, the very first teacher. regardless of what anyone else may say, you are your child's first teacher. And you do not have to have a degree in education or teaching credentials. You are the first teacher to your child, and I respect that so highly. So when I think about my business, I think about my mission, especially when it comes to homeschooling. I know from being in the classroom as a teacher and as a school principal, school leader, and also an assistant superintendent, that so many parents and caregivers decide to homeschool their children for a multitude of reasons. And sometimes it's because their children are simply not learning. It could be the teaching style that their children are not, how do I say it? The children need to have different learning styles, different teaching styles, and perhaps their learning style is not supported by the teacher. It could be that it's a one-size-fits-all in the classroom. So often teachers will not use differentiated instruction. They will teach every child as if it's one big child and make the assumption that everyone is on the same reading level, the same writing level, can compute mathematically, etc. So often in schools, there's so much testing. There's teaching to the test. Play has been replaced with top-down curriculum. It has been replaced with skill, drill, and kill, worksheets, rote learning, memorization. The fun has gone out of the classrooms. And as a result, children are failing, children are being labeled, children are being put out of school, they're being held back, they are not being met academically and socially and emotionally. And I don't really care for this. I've seen firsthand how when children are not taught to their own individual learning style, and when we've taken play out of the classroom, when we've taken out creativity and imagination, and when teachers are not teaching every single child in flexible ways that are supportive of their learning styles, then sadly so many of our children fall behind. They fall through the cracks. And as a result of that, we have so many students that are not prepared for the future. I mean, all we have to do is look at the nation's report card. All we have to do is visit the Children's Defense Fund to look at the data, the statistics, and we can see how children are falling behind and they are not prepared for high school, for college, for career readiness, for life. And so as a homeschooler, there's so many parents that have their children that are not happy. It's not working, the school system, and they want another way out. They want to see, what can I do for my child? How can I support my child? And so like I said earlier, there's a multitude of reasons as to why parents will decide to homeschool their children. I think it's important to note, Willie, that when parents do decide to homeschool their children, whether it's parents or caregivers, that it's important not to replicate the school system that they just took their child out of. It should not be school all over again at home. At least that's in my own opinion. We really need to make sure that the homeschool situation is going to cater best to the child. And we want to make sure that the child is happy, the child is learning, the child is not feeling the anxiety and the stress of what they just came out of. We want children to be happy. We want them to be motivated. We want them to succeed. And so many parents just don't see homeschooling as a way in which this can happen without replicating what they just left in the school system. And as far as my business and my mission, I am here to say that it can be this amazing new way of learning. You can support your child as a learner. and especially for how your child was innately made to learn. So often parents don't understand the importance of play in learning, how it's research-driven, how it is research-based, and that it should never stop. There's something called uninterrupted play, for example, and it's when children have the opportunity, the time, the space, the resources to just play, to be their own imaginative soul, to do what they want to do. So often as parents, we want to hover over children. We want to ask them so many questions, whether they're open-ended questions or closed-ended questions, and we really need to just take a step back. It's good to observe our children because we really want to know what their play personality is. We really want to know how they're thinking. We want to see what their decision-making is like. We want to help them with critical thinking skills, right? We want to expose them to literacy and to mathematics and science and social studies and world exploration in all those wonderful, fun ways. But we have to be real careful not to put too much of us into it and just let them be. And so what I love to do is to help parents to see what the interests are of their children, what their passions are, their child's passions. Because, again, we don't want school to look like it was when our children were not happy. We want to try something new. And so for me and for Sammy, for our family, that is called self-directed education. It's called unschooling. I love it when, for example, Tyra Hunter is someone that I met on Clubhouse. She's an amazing unschooler. Her daughter graduated out of unschooling, and Tyra likes to call it the child is the curriculum. And that's how it is here for Sammy. So based on his interests, his passions, as an educator, and even if I wasn't an educator, as a parent, I'm looking to see what he's interested in. And then I am enhancing his learning by providing resources. So, for example, for a while, Sammy loved space, like a lot of children, right? He loved exploring space. He wanted to know everything about space and the solar system. And so a typical day for us, because there really is no schedule, to be where we are reading books about space. So in our environment, literacy is huge. And that's something else, really. I'm not forcing reading upon him like it happens in classrooms, in schools. I'm not saying Sammy has to be at a certain reading level by the time he's a certain age or a certain grade. With homeschooling in our household and unschooling self-directed education, he is learning to become a reader naturally, organically. And you know what? He's so excited about it. I have never seen any resistance from him, the type of resistance that I sometimes would see in schools. So it could be that we're reading books on the solar system. We're going to the library. We're checking out books, right? It could be that he is going to create something magical in art. And what I'd love to do as a homeschooler is I'd love to provide classes for him, like on OutSchool, that's an educational resource, on the solar system, on the planet. It could be that for imaginative play, he has his little astronaut outfit, his costume, right? And he will pretend he's an astronaut. He will pretend that he's going into space. It could be with art. He's painting a picture of the galaxy system. He could be using the sensory bin, or arts and crafts, and he's also creating astronauts and planets and whatnot. It could also be that we're baking, we're cooking. We do a lot of baking and cooking. So now we're going to bring mathematics and science and social studies and all those wonderful subjects that should not be isolated. We're now going to bring them into a cooking lesson where perhaps he's making pancakes, right, in the shape of a planet. It could be that we're watching the news. He loves watching the news, and so he saw when the spaceships went up into space and when the astronauts came back recently and they talked about their journey up in space. I mean, the list goes on and on. But this is coming out of his passions, his interests. And what I do is I'm thinking of mathematically. How can I bring in some math lessons in a way that he doesn't become frustrated and resist math, right? And social studies and science and literacy. Also, a big portion of our homeschooling day is called game schooling. So we have a plethora of games that we play about the solar system. And that is teaching him so much knowledge about the solar system or whatever it is that he's interested in. And that is how he is learning. And so what I want to do with my mission and my business, it's called Watch Monkey Mama. I have a website, watchmonkeymama.com. I am a blogger, so I blog about these experiences. And I really want to help parents, especially knowing that I come from the perspective of having been a teacher and a school principal, and I know what it's like in many of these schools, in many of our schools. And I want to help parents to know that you can homeschool your child. And you can do that without the pressure and the anxiety and the stress that your child is sometimes under. You can let go. You can let children lead. You can let them be free. Every day can look different. You don't have to have a prepared schedule, or if you do, let me show you how to have a schedule that's going to work for your child. So I really want to help them to feel supported, to feel valued. I want their child's eyes to always light up. I never want that look of misery to come back. I want their voices to be heard. I don't want our children to be silenced. I want parents to feel empowered, and I want children to be empowered, and I want parents to know this is how your child learns, what your child needs. And like you have 2 daughters. If you have 3 children or 6 children, every single child is different. And we don't want to teach to the test. We want to teach to your whole child, and we want your child to be motivated and happy. And so that's what I do. That's what I do when it comes to Watch Monkey Mama. That is what I do when it comes to my business, my blogging, educational consulting. And I'll just say one more thing, Lily. Trauma sometimes plays a big part in this. Trauma that comes from what our children may have experienced if they were in school, and trauma that we sometimes bring to our homeschooling experience. When I think about the way I was taught as a child to read and to write and to mathematically compute, right? When I think about that, it's not the best memories. It's not. In fact, I was forced, right, like a lot of our students, a lot of our children. I felt stress. I felt anxiety and anxiousness. Whenever it was my turn to read, we had something called round-robin reading. I can see it now in my mind, where we were sat in rows in our schools, and the person in front of me, like we had to go down the row, and then the next person read, and I remember like freaking out. Oh my goodness, am I going to know what I'm supposed to read, what the words say, how to pronounce them, how to comprehend what I just read, how to answer a question? Like, I was just freaking out. I was nervous. I was anxious. I was stressed, right? And that trauma that I went through, that trauma helps me to think about how Sammy is experiencing reading and writing and mathematics. At age 6, he knows he can do it all. It's such a beautiful thing when children are not rushed into doing something, because he'll come to me, he'll come to my husband, he'll say, Mommy, Daddy, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And the joy in his heart, the joy in his voice, the smile on his face, his eyes lighting up, because no one has said to him, you can't do that. No one has said to him, you're a B student, or you're 85%. What is a percent? Why are we telling children 6 years old that you're a percentage, or you're a grade, you're a number? You know, this is a statement about you, and yes, you're good, but you could be so much better. He's not getting any of that, and I want parents to realize that the trauma that we sometimes have gone through, we've got to be real careful to check that trauma, because it's either going to help to direct our children that we homeschool in a very good way, because we don't want to repeat those same cycles, right? Or it could be negative. and we could be doing the same thing to our children that was done to us. And that is what we do not want to do. So that's my mission. That's my business. So thank you for asking.
And I'm so glad that you came on, because like I said, I'm on Clubhouse and I love following what your passion is. And I have a few homeschool groups that one of the biggest fears of everyone is that it confuses me, but not really, because I understand how mentally it's scary. But a lot of people are so scared and they're worried about, like, if I pull my kid out, what'll happen. But I don't think a lot of people realize that if the child wants to homeschool, because sometimes some kids like being in school, some kids, if they show an interest and want to come out, or there's a reason for you wanting to pull them out, and there are so many ways to still give them a group of kids to be around, or it's a lot of different things that you can do. But one of the problems with people keeping the child in is what you just said, the trauma every day, just going. That's way worse than any trauma that homeschooling can do. It was different issues for me starting out, because I didn't understand everything with homeschooling. But like I said, if they were in public school, it would have been some of those same trip-ups with trying to understand. Like you just said, why your child have to come home feeling like they did great, but they could have done better. They were this, but it was this. With the way my kids took their paths, they both are actually, they're on very different paths even now. Like with one with their college career, and the other is doing things in acting and different things online. But all in all, like you said, it's just about what they want to do. And that's why I know what your passion is and what you do. I just wanted to kind of introduce it to everyone before we really get into everything soon on Clubhouse. And I'll be definitely stopping in and inviting people in.
Thank you so much. And I love hearing your story, your journey of your daughters. The minute I met you on Clubhouse and heard about the reasons why you pulled your daughters out and how you made sure to cater to their own individual needs, I mean, it was a big ups, big kudos to you. I knew that you were definitely unique, because you didn't see your daughters as a set of, like, the same. You just said it just now. They're both very different. They both had their own interests, their unique needs, and you saw this early on. Like, you were a pioneer. You saw this early on, and to this day, they're successful. They're happy. I've got a big smile on my face, because that's what I want for Sammy. The same thing that you saw for your daughters, I want to see that, continue to see that for my son and for other children. Children are so smart, and they have so many desires, and they really can be successful if only they had the time and the space, and also the support, the assistance. And when I say the support, again, it's kind of like not that hovering over support, but it's the letting go. It's the letting them lead. It's watching them blossom, watching them flourish, because they're so amazing. And I think so often we just think the curriculum has to be given to us. We think that, well, and I get that. I get that it's called deschooling. Deschooling is a process that many homeschoolers go through when you're homeschooling your children, because you have these constant replays in your head, right? These constant tapes of footage of what school should look like, of what school should be like, right? Even if it's negative and it makes you feel kind of weird, you're like, but it's all I know. It's all I know. So even though it didn't work for me, and even though it didn't work for my child necessarily, it's all I know. So let me go buy all this box curriculum, right? Or let me do what someone else has told me that I need to do for my child. But no, you know your child. You know your child. Something I like to do is I'd like to tell parents that to really observe your children, like you did with your daughters. You knew how they learned. You knew how they wanted to come to learning a particular thing. And it's so important to know. Like there are some students, some children that do like a lot of structure, that do like a more traditional approach when it comes to homeschooling. And that's perfectly fine. And they might have a sibling who's the complete opposite, who wants a very laid-back, very carefree, fluid homeschooling journey. And that's good, too. And there's so many different philosophies out here. I'm using the self-directed unschooling approach. There is Montessori. There's Waldorf. There's Abeka. There's Charlotte Mason, classical. I mean, I can name so many. And I would really suggest that parents do the research. Find out what type of homeschool philosophies are out there, educational philosophies, and then see what matches up to your child. And also know that you have time and space. Get rid of that clock. Get rid of that calendar. Get rid of those deadlines. Oh, well, you know, he's got to be at this point or she has to be at this point. You're homeschooling because you want to save your child. And when we want to save children, we don't want to suddenly give them all these demands and stress and anxiety. We don't want to do that. We want to make it so this is the best thing for them. And in the end, it will be. It really will be.
Yes, it definitely will. One of the other things I want to add in is when you said the support, something that I would change myself and a lot of new parents, they have to make sure instead of trying to force, an acceptance, like forcing people to understand why you homeschool, seek out people who homeschool. That's the great thing about Clubhouse, and where I guess, like I said, by me learning as I went up, now I want to help others when at the beginning to just change the whole support system. You have to just find like-minded people and enjoy the journey instead of trying to force other people to understand. People don't realize you can mix the two. Like where if you may, it's because you can bring, as your child goes to school, if you're scared to pull them out, you can look at your blog and maybe think of some ways to help the child, outside of school or in ways like that. So it's different ways to help yourself or do different things.
I'm so glad you said that. It's interesting. My journey, actually, my mission in my business is actually twofold, and I know I was specifically talking about the homeschooling part, but I'm glad you said that because the other part is that we know that there are so many parents and caregivers and that they drop their children off to school each and every day, and they trust the teachers, and they trust them with all their hearts to prepare their babies for a bright and for a successful career and life ahead. And we know that this may be the case for some children and youth, that it's successful, but sadly it's the opposite for a majority of students in our nation's schools. So many parents, though, who want to homeschool their children, they're not able to, right? They might be essential workers. They have to work, or they want to work. There are many parents, caregivers who they don't want to homeschool their children. They're like, you know what, I wish I could, but that's just not me personally. I want to work. I want to be around adults. I want to have my own interest in terms of working and making money and making a difference in other people's lives, and I respect that. And so for me, it's twofold because I also want to help those parents that if you are in a situation where you have to take your child to a school and you know your child's not happy, right? Maybe it's a school where they don't have the best resources, they don't have the best teachers, they don't have the best curriculum. Maybe it's so much testing, it's so much anxiety. It's your child has become a behavioral issue, and really your child is just bored. Maybe your child's bored. Your child's not challenged, right? but maybe the school educators, maybe they just don't know how to reach your child, or they want to label your child. But for whatever the reason, you can't pull your child out. You can't homeschool. And so for me, I want to be able to help those parents. I'm so glad you said that, Willie, because the good thing, again, going back to the parent being the child's first teacher, the good thing is that we have hopefully our mornings before we drop our child off. We have our afternoons and our evenings, and we have our weekends. We have our summers. And I would say that even if there is a parent who has a child and you're listening to your podcast and you're saying, wow, I wish my child could do unschooling. I hear what Lesley is saying about self-directed education and following your passions and following your interests. But my child is in this very traditional school. I have no choice. My child has to go to this neighborhood school that it's a failing school. Or Willie, it could be a blue ribbon school, right? Because not all blue ribbon schools are the best schools, in my opinion. You know, my child is in this blue ribbon school, but my child's not happy. Maybe my child has too much pressure. Maybe they're forcing my child to do 3 hours of homework a night. Maybe my child is just stressed out and it's too much. So what I would say is that let's find those pockets of time when your child is outside of that school, when you can really do the homeschooling portion of what I'm talking about, or some other educational philosophy, and your child can come to life. Your child can be happy again, you know, on the weekends or in the evenings or on their way to school, and you're using some of those resources, those strategies, those skills, where you really are reaching your child, and your child is happy and excited, and they're following their interests, their passions. You know, maybe it's pottery. So maybe in the weekends you're going to enroll your child, maybe right alongside them you're going to take a ceramics pottery class, right? Or maybe it's your child is a bookworm and your child wants to select their own literature, right? Maybe they don't want to go to they're sick of being in a school where the books are given to them all the time, right? The teacher says, no, you can't read what you want to read. You have to read what I say you have to read. So maybe on the weekend, it's the time for you and your child to have a book study group, right? Or maybe you want to bring in other children and you want to support that. Maybe your child loves to bake and to cook, and that's your child's passion. So maybe on the weekends or once a week, you have a night where your child is going to do the cooking, and prior to that, both of you are going to sit down and your child's going to think about the recipe, and you're going to bring culture and world history and literacy and math and all that into it, and go grocery shopping with your child and talk about money and finances, financial literacy, and you're going to make so many connections, and then your child is going to be responsible for making the family dinner that particular night every week. I mean, there's so many ways you can sort of still do some of these wonderful, fun, hands-on experiential approaches with your child, even if they are stuck. And I'd like to say that word stuck because sometimes we are stuck in our situations, our circumstances, but that shouldn't be our excuse nor our justification for staying there. We still can make life happen for our children that is fun and exciting and joyful in other ways outside of the typical classroom or school experience. So that's what I like to do also. I want to work with all parents. If you're homeschooling, that's awesome. If you're not, that's still awesome because I can help you. I can still help you. So, and Clubhouse is a great thing. And I'll finish by saying you're so right, Willie. It is so good to find your tribe. Find your tribe. Find people that are like-minded. And be real careful what you say to people because others who may not even know, they're going to pass their judgment. And I would say usually it's going to be negative. A lot of people just don't understand. And instead of saying, I don't understand what you're saying, can you explain that to me? Instead, you know what they want to do? They want to criticize you. They want to put that down. What do you mean you don't give your child a test? What are you talking about? Every child should take a test. You know, what do you mean your child is learning how to read on their own and you're not giving them benchmark exams or assessments and trying to figure out what reading level they're on? What are you talking about? You know, what do you mean your child doesn't have a lot of play groups and your child is not going to be in school? That's the only place where they're learning to be social, and you're going to have your child stay home. I don't understand that. You shouldn't be doing that. That's not right. you turned out okay, you know. So we have to be real careful who we talk to and what we say, and we have to find our tribe. We have to find our voice. We have to be educated. And when I say educated, when you know the philosophy you are using, read up on it, become well-versed, find people that will be your support system. Because you're gonna have your times when you're feeling really low. I've had my times, Willie, where I sometimes was like, am I doing the right thing? Like, should I be pulling out a curriculum? Should I be pulling out a resource? Should I? And what I do is I call my accountability partner, and that's my sister Elsa. She's one of my accountability partners, probably the main one because she's an educator too. And I'll say, Elsa, I'm feeling a little weak. I'm feeling a little like the schooling process is sort of creeping up on me. That inner chatter that's negative, I'm starting to question, should I be doing this? Is Sammy learning? Is he happy? Is he going to be okay? And she will stop me and say, absolutely, yes, you're doing a great job. Do not open up that curriculum. Do not do this. Do not. She's like, Lesley, keep going, keep going. So it's so important to know what we're saying to people, how much we're opening up, but we have to find our tribe. We have to do the research, read the articles, listen to the podcast like your podcast. Find people who have done it, find people who are doing it now, and develop that confidence. Because one day you're going to be competent, and you're going to know exactly what you're doing and be like, oh, my gosh, yes, I could do it with my eyes closed and my hands, tied and all that. But at first, you've got to develop that confidence, and you only do that by working on your competence, by reading, doing the research, becoming well-versed. Because then when those questions come, you will talk so much. And then when your child starts talking and showing them just how amazing they are, I think those people are going to start to back off and be like, wow, there's something good about this. She must be on to something, or Willie, he's on to something, because look at how amazing his two daughters are, So, yes, very excellent point. I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you, Willie.
And I appreciate everything you said. Now, I definitely will be, I'll come in and edit it as quick as I can so that I can share it with everyone. I appreciate you calling in. And like I said, I'll definitely be on the back in Clubhouse soon. I just have been kind of off the app for a while, but I'll be back on real soon.
I am looking forward. In fact, I am going to be hosting a room that I would love for you to be part of. So I will be sending you some back channel messages or on Instagram so that we can set that up. And is it okay if I tell people how they can find me on social media?
Oh, definitely, yes.
Oh, thank you so much. I have so enjoyed this. This has been exciting. Thank you, Willie, for this opportunity. So I would love to connect with others, whether you're homeschooling now, whether you're thinking about homeschooling, whether you've been a homeschooler and you've got your own success stories or even challenges. There's a few ways that you can connect with me. So first of all, I have my blog at watchmonkeymama.com. So watchmonkeymama.com is my website and my blog. And I'd love you to connect with me there. There's a contact page, and you can fill it out, and I will respond. I also am on LinkedIn and Wisdom under Lesley Jones Sessler. I'm also on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram under Watch Monkey Mama. Also on Clubhouse. I've got some amazing rooms. I am the host of the Homeschooling Adventures Clubhouse room. We have two rooms. One is early in the morning on Mondays. It's called Homeschool and a Cup of Java, and it's at 6:15ish early in the morning EST, Eastern Standard Time. And that's a room where we come together and we just talk about anything, whatever's on your mind, homeschool related. So I'd love to see you in that Clubhouse room. And then also on Thursdays at 12:30 p.m. EST, that is a room in Homeschooling Adventures where we have a topic of homeschooling that we'll be talking about. And then also I have the Share, Inspire, Educate Clubhouse room on Fridays 5 o'clock p.m. EST. That's with my sister Elsa and our niece Brooklyn. And there we talk about all things education, parenting, and social issues. And that's 5 o'clock p.m. EST. So that's how you can reach me. I'd love to connect with you all. So thank you so much.
Okay, and like I said, I'll be in touch, and I'll definitely try to get back into the rooms real soon. Thank you so
I'm looking
much.
Forward to it.
I appreciate you.
Oh, thank you so much, Willie, and God bless you all and all that you're doing. Thank you so much, Willie. You take care.
Okay, all right. Talk to you later.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.